Vince Carter was one of the best players the NBA has ever seen. His dunks were legendary.
To the hoop. Swings it right side. Carter at the foul line. Oh, with a right-handed monster jam.
His longevity was unheard of.
The history is made in Atlanta tonight. Vince Carter checking into the game, and it's official. The first man to play in the NBA in 4 different decades.
And his impact on the game? Undeniable.
It takes a lot to carry the league, which he did, and then mentor guys who couldn't carry his shoes at times. That takes a real humility, and I admire him for it.
He made 8 All-Star teams, scored over 25,000 career points, and played 22 seasons. But for all his talent, records, and jaw-dropping highlights, there's one thing missing from his resume: a championship. And by the time his career was over, Carter held an unfortunate record: more career losses than any player in NBA history. How did a player this good, this respected, and this dominant for so long never win a ring? Was it bad luck, bad teams, or was Vince Carter just never built for the biggest moments? To understand that, we need to go back to Daytona Beach, Florida, where it all began. Basketball wasn't Carter's first love. He was a multi-sport athlete, excelling in football, volleyball, and even band. Yes, band. He was a gifted drummer and played saxophone, and at one point he even considered a career in music. But as he grew taller and more athletic, basketball became his clear path. By his senior year, he was averaging 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 7 assists per game, leading his team to a state championship. His mix of size, skill, and athleticism made him a 5-star recruit and one of the top players in the country. When it came time to choose a college, Carter followed his AAU teammate and friend, Anton Jamison, to a program known for producing NBA talent, like Michael Jordan, James Worthy, and many others: UNC. But at as small as talented as North Carolina, Carter didn't start right away. As a freshman, he played limited minutes, averaging 7.5 points per game, but his raw potential was obvious. Even in short bursts, he had Tar Heel fans on their feet with his crazy dunks. By his second year, Carter was ready to take off, literally. He became a full-time starter and saw his role increase. His scoring jumped to 13.0 points per game, and his efficiency skyrocketed, shooting nearly 60% from the field. But it wasn't just the numbers, it was how he played. His acrobatic finishes, smooth mid-range jumper, and effortless explosiveness made him a nightmare for defenders. That year, he helped lead UNC to the Final Four, proving he could perform under pressure. But the best was still to come. Carter's junior season was where he truly became a superstar. He averaged 15.6 points and 5.1 rebounds per game. But again, the stats don't tell the full story. UNC was loaded with talent, including Anton Jamison, and together, they led the Tar Heels to another Final Four appearance. Carter was named second-team All-American, showing that he was one of the top players in the country. By the end of his junior season, there was no doubt. He was NBA ready. Even though he had one more year of eligibility, Carter declared for the 1998 NBA Draft, ready to take his game to the next level. His athleticism, scoring ability, and highlight reel potential made him one of the most exciting prospects in the class. But his draft night didn't go exactly as planned. With the 5th overall pick, the Golden State Warriors selected Carter. But before Warriors fans could even process the pick, the team pulled off a draft night trade. Carter was immediately dealt to the Toronto Raptors in exchange for his college teammate Anton Jamison, who was taken 4th overall. At the time, the Raptors were still a young, struggling expansion team. They had never made the playoffs and desperately needed a star to build around. Toronto took a chance, and within just a few years, that gamble would change the entire NBA. Basketball in Canada wasn't exactly a hit. That all changed the moment Carter stepped on the court. Despite the NBA lockout shortening the season to 50 games, Carter wasted no time making his presence felt. He averaged 18.3 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 3.0 assists per game, winning Rookie of the Year, instantly becoming the face of Canadian basketball. Carter's sophomore season was legendary. He exploded onto the scene, averaging 25.7 points per game, earning his first All-Star selection and making the Raptors must-watch TV. But his moment of the season by far was the dunk contest, a reverse 360 windmill.
All right, here is Vince Carter with his first stop. Let's go home!
An under-the-hoop 180 windmill.
Carter.
An off-the-bounce between the legs windmill.
It's the finale on the first round for Vince Carter. Oh, it did not! It's over!
An elbow dunk.
Vince Carter with his first on the final round.
And nearly a free throw line dunk.
Here comes Carter and puts it down.
It wasn't even a competition. It was a Vince Carter show. That night, Vincanity was officially born. But it wasn't just the flashy dunks that made Carter special. He changed the culture of basketball in Toronto and turned the Raptors into contenders. In the 2000-01 season, he averaged a career-high 37.6 points per game, leading Toronto to their first ever playoff series win. That set up an epic second-round showdown against Allen Iverson and the Philadelphia 76ers. Carter and Iverson went back and forth, both dropping 50-point games in one of the greatest playoff duels in history. In Game 7, it all came down to one shot. Carter, with the game and the series on the line, rose up for a potential game-winning jumper. The ball arched perfectly. The crowd held its breath, but it just missed. A crushing end to an incredible series, but one thing was clear: Vince Carter was one of the best players in the NBA. Carter continued to put up all-star numbers, but behind the scenes, things started to fall apart. The Raptors struggled with injuries, front office instability, and roster changes. By 2004, Carter's frustration boiled over. He got mad at the organization, and rumors started that he wasn't giving full effort. Then, in December 2004, it all fell apart. The Raptors traded Carter to the New Jersey Nets in a blockbuster deal, ending an era that once felt destined for greatness. Toronto fans felt betrayed. The man who had put the Raptors on the map was gone, and the city's heart broke. But despite the messy breakup, his impact stretched far beyond the court. Vince Carter didn't just give Canada a basketball star, he gave them hope and pride, inspiring a generation of young players and making Toronto a legit NBA city. But his journey was still far from over, and in New Jersey, Carter would prove he had a lot left in the tank. When Vince Carter landed in New Jersey, he had a chip on his shoulder. People thought he was washed. They said he quit on the Raptors. But the moment he suited up for the Nets, he reminded everyone just exactly who he was. After averaging just 15.9 PPG in his final games with the Raptors, Carter exploded for 27.5 PPG with the Nets, one of the biggest mid-season turnarounds in NBA history. With Jason Kidd running the show and Richard Jefferson on the wing, the Nets suddenly had one of the most dangerous trios in the league. For the next few seasons, Carter was an absolute force. He made 3 straight All-Star appearances and averaged 25-plus points per game in back-to-back seasons. And I have to show you the ridiculous poster over Alonzo Mourning, one of the best shot blockers of all time.
Can't get it over Zoe, but then someone else can.
Year after year, Carter was putting up legendary numbers, but it wasn't enough. In 2006, Carter torched the Pacers in the first round, averaging 29 points per game. But in the second round, the Heat knocked the Nets out in 5. Miami went on to win the championship. In 2007, the Nets beat the Raptors in a revenge series for Carter, where he destroyed his former team with a 37-point performance, but in the next round, they fell to LeBron's Cavs in 6. Carter was pulling up MVP-level stats, but it didn't matter. The Nets kept running into walls in the playoffs. By 2007, the Nets' championship window had slammed shut. Jason Kidd got traded, Richard Jefferson was lost, and Carter was left carrying a team that was going nowhere. Despite this, he never quit. He still put up 20-plus PPG every season, still had ridiculous game winners, and still played like a superstar. But without a real supporting cast, his efforts didn't lead to wins. Finally, in 2009, the Nets pulled the plug. They sent Carter to Orlando, where he'd finally have a real shot at chasing something he'd been searching his whole career for: a championship. Orlando was fresh off an NBA Finals run and had just knocked out LeBron's Cavs in the East. They had Dwight Howard in his prime, a loaded roster with shooters like Rashard Lewis and Jameer Nelson, and a coach in Stan Van Gundy who knew how to win. The one thing they lacked? A go-to perimeter scorer. Enter Vince Carter. Even at 32 years old, Carter was still dangerous. In his first season with Orlando, he averaged 16.6 PPG, 3.9 RPG, and 3.1 APG while shooting nearly 37% from 3. He wasn't putting up his New Jersey numbers, but he didn't need to. His job was to hit big shots and help Orlando get over the hump. They won 59 games, the second best record in the NBA, and the Magic swept the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, looking like favorites to get back to the finals. Then came the biggest moment of Carter's career, the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. But Carter struggled. He had solid moments, but in Game 2, with a chance to steal a crucial win, he missed 2 huge free throws in the final seconds. The Magic lost, went down 0-2, and never recovered. They fell in 6 games, and Carter's best shot at a championship slipped away. By the start of the 2010-11 season, it was clear Orlando was going in a different direction. Carter's role was shrinking, and in December 2010, he was traded to the Phoenix Suns, where his efficiency dipped. His role wasn't clearly defined, and for the first time in his career, he was on a team that missed the playoffs. After the season, the Suns decided to waive Carter, making him a free agent. But instead of fading away, Carter reinvented himself in Dallas. Carter signed with the Mavs just months after their championship run in 2011. The team still had Dirk Nowitzki, but key pieces like Tyson Chandler and JJ Barea were gone. Even as his athleticism declined, Carter became a reliable role player, averaging around 12 PPG across 3 seasons and shooting nearly 40% from 3. He had huge moments, but none bigger than one shot in the playoffs: Mavs versus Spurs. Game 3, down 2, just 1.7 seconds left. Vintage Vince. Clutch, confident, and impossible to guard. But unfortunately, Dallas went on to lose the series. And after 3 solid years, Carter left in 2014 to sign with the Memphis Grizzlies. He wasn't the high-flying dunk machine anymore, but he had become something just as important: a respected veteran who could still change a game when it mattered most. Even after a couple injuries, Carter wasn't ready to call it quits. He became the oldest player in NBA history to drop 24 points off the bench. By the time he left in 2017, he had proven something few players ever do: he could still contribute at 40 years old. Carter would go on to sign a 1-year deal with the Kings, then a 2-year deal for the Hawks. Even at 42 years old, Carter hit 142 threes. Carter retired a legend after 22 NBA seasons, the most by any player in history at the time. He became the first player to play in 4 different decades and the only player in NBA history to record at least 25,000 points, 6,000 rebounds, 4,000 assists, and 1,500 three-pointers. He was an 8-time All-Star and the greatest dunker in NBA history. The only thing missing from his resume was, well, a ring. and by the end of his career, he had lost more games with 756 than any player in NBA history, a stat that often overshadowed his achievements. But here's the thing, most of those losses came during his later years with the Sacramento Kings and Atlanta Hawks, where he was guiding young teams as a mentor. When Vince was in his prime, he wasn't just putting up crazy numbers, he was leading teams to wins. Look at his time with the Toronto Raptors. He elevated the franchise to new heights, making them a legitimate playoff contender and making basketball loved across Canada. The narrative around his career often focuses on the most losses record, but that doesn't tell the whole story. His longevity is part of the reason he holds that record, and it's unfair to ignore the impact he had, especially in the years when he was still winning games at a high level. He doesn't get enough credit for how much he contributed to his teams. In fact, he has more career wins than losses. But most of the talk is about him never winning a championship. It wasn't for a lack of trying. Carter had his chances. During his prime years with the Raptors and later with the New Jersey Nets, he was surrounded by talented teams, but the championship simply never came. But even without the championship, though, Carter's impact on the game through his dunks, leadership, and mentorship earned him respect, cementing his place in NBA history as one of the greatest players to never win it all, the greatest loser of all time.